Appreciate you in the mix. Thank you, Ann. And now I call him the legal ninja because he is just that. Former federal prosecutor. Yeah. Now he's working for the defense. David Katz, everyone. David,
great
to
have
you
How
here,
are you?
Sir. I'm well, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to these conversations. And frankly, the law is so much the center of issues in America. We're waiting now, just to confront the Supreme Court docket first, we're waiting now for the case involving the abortion pill. I wonder if it was delayed. The judgment was to have been, I think, handed down yesterday, and they said that we want till the end of the week. Does that delay indicate anything? I mean, can you read tea leaves from anything you've seen out of the court on this?
Well, Mark, Kim, it's great to be with you guys. I think that they are not going to support the injunction that was ordered by the Amarillo, Texas judge, the one that they cherry-picked and steered the case to. And I don't think they're going to go with the Fifth Circuit decision either, because I think that there are at least 5 votes on the Supreme Court to not do that. I see Chief Justice Roberts and Kavanaugh going with what you might call here the pharmaceutical industry. One of your listeners wrote last week to me and said, let's see if they'll go with their big pharma impulses or go with their theological, theocratic impulses. And there are 5 of them, if you want to see it that way, who are going to go with big pharma, because this really is a huge issue. I mean, right now, the Fifth Circuit decision, Mark, would leave a decision by a bunch of judges who don't know, they don't know the law. They know the law, but they don't know the testing. They don't know the kinds of things that you really need to know to make an informed decision. I mean, I know that they can learn, they can get up to speed, but the reality is the FDA has a review process, and these huge pharmaceutical, these products rely on that, and these billion-dollar industries rely on that. And the idea that they can be just sort of, jostled and messed around with by a nationwide injunction. So the nationwide injunction, I think, will be very hard for the 5 of them, at least 5 of them, to support. The 3 moderate to liberals, I'm assuming, think this whole thing is a horror show, and that it shouldn't apply to either the medical abortion and it shouldn't apply to any pharmaceuticals. But if the FDA decides, what's happened was, let me just explain this really briefly. There's a 23-year-old acceptance of this drug. It's the main drug by which women get abortions. It's the main way that women get abortions. It's 53% of the abortions are used with this method, along with another pill, which for the moment is not under attack. It will be, especially if this goes the way it looks like it might be going in front of the Amarillo judge. But there's a so that is not. The Fifth Circuit said, look, you can't go back and monkey around with a 23-year-old decision, basically approving this drug. So the 3 judges on the Fifth Circuit, very conservative, overruled what the trial judge, the judge that the Christian rights advocate who ended up on the federal bench and who was steered this case, they overruled him. But what still stands is that it's 7 weeks and not 10 weeks. A lot of women don't know that they're pregnant until 4 or 5 weeks. So the idea you have to run to and do something about it within 7 weeks, it just, where's the medical evidence? Where is the logic of the U.S. Supreme Court going with the 7 weeks rather than leaving the 10 weeks in place until the very end of the decision of the case? And the other one is that you have to go to a doctor and you can't use the U.S. mails, Mark. And that's one that the blue states can kind of get around when it comes to the mails. They can stockpile this drug so you can get it on just about any street corner without having to use the mails in the blue states. But you would still have to go see a doctor in order to get a prescription. And it's a very routine, safe drug that people don't really go to doctors to get. We don't go to doctors to get a prescription for a lot of penicillin. We don't go to doctors to get a prescription for the COVID drugs. So I think all of that will be too much for the U.S. Supreme Court. And my take on it is that Alito didn't have the votes. If he had the votes, 5 votes, he would have kept the injunction in effect. He would have changed the status quo. He didn't have the 5 votes. My take on it is he's trying to get the fifth vote. He's trying to get Kavanaugh or somebody to go with him. That won't happen. So I think on Friday, what they'll do is they'll send the whole case back to the trial judge in Amarillo. Now, that's not such a happy outcome because he plans to make more rulings like this and to give Planned Parenthood and the FDA as much of a hard time as he can. But when he does that, it'll be the same thing all over again. It'll go to the Fifth Circuit and maybe it'll go to the Supreme Court. So that's what I think is the future of this case. But, they say it's very hard to make predictions, especially about the future.
Yeah, well, your predictions and handicaps have been fairly strong. I mean, I'll give you one. We haven't gotten to get. I'll get to the Dominion thing, but you predicted that they would settle, even if it went all the way to the last second. You said no, they're going to settle this, and you were right. So we'll get to that. So I think your predictions are worth something. I thought it was interesting that in your remarks just now that you noted something that I was talking about in the first hour in conversations about the court. I think you can never really lose track of the fact that they have ultimate fealty, I think, to corporate and business interests. And the religious exemption case that's before the Supreme Court now about the, not making someone who's a devout Christian work on Sunday, they're only in arguments, but even that Amy Coney Barrett, who's a devout Roman Catholic, she was asking whether or not it doesn't, this is along with Kavanaugh, asking, put an undue burden on the business to accommodate a lot of these religious demands, like I don't work on Sundays. So to hear that from somebody who herself professes to be a devout Christian, I thought it spoke, again, to the true loyalties, which are to business interests.
Well, you may have something there. Do you want to talk about Dominion, or should we stay on?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, that was just I was just trying to impress you with my granular knowledge of an Amy Coney Barrett argument. Let's go to Dominion then. All right. So now to Dominion. You predicted they'd settle, and they got a huge number, did they not?
Well, that is the way of civil cases, that they tend to settle, and there was so much at stake for both parties. I think the people who say that Fox didn't make an apology, they made 787 million apologies, and they made the apologies in a way that really hit home for a commercial corporation. I mean, Murdoch and his family figured out a great way to make money. That's spewing right-wing propaganda and what they do on Fox News. But the idea is to make money. And they had maybe $4 billion on hand, they said, during the discovery process. They probably had more, but let's assume that that's right. Paying, 20% of all the cash that you have on hand when you're Fox, their TV, has, the big NFL games. They have all kinds of other sports things. They have a entertainment division. They have interests over in Europe, around the world. For that corporation to pay 20% of the cash it had on hand because of this huge, really, I mean, it's not really a blunder. I was going to say blunder, but that's not the right word. This was an intentional hit on Dominion. This was an intentional effort to keep Trump in the presidency when he lost the election. Let's see it for what it was. But while they were doing that, they really defamed this corporation. They picked on somebody their own size for once, Fox News. They had the money to fight back, hire great lawyers. And just quickly, people have asked me, well, why didn't Fox News settle earlier before they were so embarrassed? And of course, the reason was they thought they could cut off Dominion, a voting machines corporation, at the pass. They thought they could win the motions in front of that judge and preclude some of the discovery that Dominion was asking for. But when they couldn't, and they were now taking depositions under oath of the star presenters, Hannity and Carlson at Fox, and they were taking the top executives like Murdoch and other people. They said, you know what, this is just not playing out well for us. We are going to be even more embarrassed. And yes, the fact that they didn't have to read an apology on Fox News, even that, they would have read the apology if that had been forced to be part of it. And then they would have spun it all later on and stuff like that. They would have somehow made themselves the victims, big media and the establishment somehow had screwed them. And the last thing go ahead.
No, no, I was going to say that I think there's something to that. And the other thing I would say this, David, I guess I'm asking, but from my understanding, is that, hey, in a civil case, it's pretty unusual for you to have to read some statement or whatever. I mean, it's really the the civil cures are about money, which is why the size of the judgment is so very important. I mean, it does underscore what you're talking about, that there was real intent there to defame someone, when I say someone, this Dominion.
Well, there may
So
be, Mark, there may be some settlements we haven't heard about, right? But from what we've heard in the media and what we know about as the public, this seems to be the largest defamation verdict awarded and collected, because they're going to actually get this money. Fox News is not going to go bankrupt. They're not going to play games. You know, that what Alex Jones guy who looks like the money's going here, there, and everywhere offshore. Fox isn't going to do that. Someone's going to actually collect $800 million. And that really does speak for itself. I mean, this is a huge disaster for Fox, for anybody who's looking at who's not their base. And it's a huge win for Dominion, because remember, Dominion had a business reputation. They have to go around to states and get states to agree to use their voting machine, and other nations, but especially states. If you have half the states that are red and they're not going to buy Dominion's voting machines because they think, they don't count the votes properly, that was a huge hit to Dominion. Dominion is now totally past that. If you're on the Oklahoma board that decides what voting machine to use, the fact that you're a red state doesn't mean that you can turn Dominion down. Dominion has a great machine, and if you win the election, it's going to count the vote properly. And that's what you're stuck with if you're an Oklahoma official, you're a Mississippi official, no matter how red you are. This base that is sort of mesmerized by Fox News and can't get past whatever they broadcast. That base, with all due respect, doesn't have much economic force. It really doesn't. It's kind of a declining part of the population. It's the people with the grievances. It's the people who aren't doing well economically. It's not the people who are deciding what voting machines to use in the state. So Dominion got what it really needed, and it didn't need an apology. And the last thing is that people who say the judge should have forced that down their throats as part of the settlement, would you, if you were the judge on that case and the parties both agreed on $800 million and there was going to be no doubt, no appeal, no trial, you were going to what? You're going to call the jury in there and make there be a trial?
yeah, yeah.
You wouldn't.
This is exactly what I said to John Rothman yesterday. That the judges incentivized, the judges always incentivized in these civil cases to, look, you've got a settlement. Don't mess with it. It's done. Next case. And it was a huge bit of news and a huge settlement indeed. That's such a great breakdown. And as you say, something that you issue, if you'll pardon the expression in this country, at gunpoint, at legal gunpoint, meaning you have to issue a statement, it can be spun any number of ways. I wanted to, while we're just talking about the high court, and the Clarence Thomas thing is amazing to me. I mean, it's both amazing for the brazenness of this guy. Brazenness is a ding word, I think. But I also am just astounded that I'm astounded, as all Americans are, that there is no ethical underpinning that will hold him to account.
Well, I think you have to bear in mind, and some of your listeners and viewers are too young to remember, or they've read about it, but it's hard to get the full perspective of how disgraced, how debased, and demeaned Clarence Thomas was. Anita Hill was so believable. And her testimony was so devastating. And I won't go into all the details, but they were salacious. They were awful. They made Thomas really a pariah. And then he had this great line. He said, well, it's like a legal lynching. No, it wasn't. It was a legal finding by sensible people that he was not fit to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. Having said that, just about all the Republicans and some of the Democrats got kind of cowed at this idea that they weren't going to confirm an African American to the court, blah, blah, blah. And so there he was. But he had really no reputation. I went to Berkeley's law school. I don't think he's ever been invited to Berkeley's law school. There would be a walkout to end all walkouts if he went anywhere near Berkeley's law school, Harvard, Columbia, Stanford, you name it. So this person was an utter pariah. The only thing that I would say, satirically, is that if Crow really was his friend, that's because he couldn't find friends anywhere else unless he had power over them, because he was such he wasn't like, let's say, Alito. I don't agree with Alito for many of the reasons I don't agree with Thomas's decisions. But, Alito is a person worthy of respect, greatly respected. He could show up at all those schools and you could have a principled debate with him, with which you might disagree on 80% of the controversial issues. Thomas is not that person. And so Thomas was never, people have talked about Abe Fortas. Abe Fortas was someone who was in the middle of the establishment. He cared very much what people thought about him, and they had a huge, acclaim for him. Just so you know, I am not a contemporary of Abe Fortas, but I know the story about he had to resign from the U.S. Supreme Court, and he probably did, if he did everything they accused him of, what Clarence Thomas does in a day. Taking a $500,000 junket with someone who, in fact, does have business before the Supreme Court, who, in fact, is part of an organization that files amicus briefs with the Supreme Court, that argues for this hands-off of government view that Thomas then votes for. But my point is that Thomas is not hemmed in by any of the restraints that people care about their reputation, because his reputation was so shot to begin with. And when I hear that somebody clerked on the U.S. Supreme Court and they seem like they're kooky, I always see that they clerked for Justice Clarence Thomas. They judged the lawyer who argued for Trump that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not only not be prosecuted, but not be arrested. I said, this person clerked on the U.S. Supreme Court, and there you were, Clarence Thomas. It's weird. He's just weird, and only the law will pen him in. He'll never leave. They'll carry him out, but he will not leave voluntarily. If he did, it would be Fortas all over again. Fortas resigned under Nixon.
This is the point I made yesterday. That was a different time when he resigned under an opposing party's executive control of the White House.
And let me say one other thing, which will shock your viewers. Since that time, which was 69, when Nixon first came into office after LBJ, who I think had appointed Fortas. And Fortas was legal establishment in a way that Thomas never was and never will be. We've never had a Democratic U.S. Supreme Court since 1969. My entire, basically, a life. We've never had one. And that's what it entailed. And, if Thomas left, it would be a huge change in the U.S. Supreme Court. Right now, Biden would pick somebody. It would be just like that, but in the reverse. And we're not in those times. We're just not in those times. But having said that, Thomas and the conservatives, they know what the stakes are. And I'm sure they think back on the fact that, wow, after Fortas resigned over a matter of principle, just the appearance of corruption, the Democrats have never had a majority on the U.S. Supreme Court since 1969. Think about that.
Well, they gamed it with under Obama. They didn't give him the choice on Obama. It was.
I come from regular stock.
Yeah, well, Clarence Thomas comes from regular stock. He's just looking for a Walmart parking lot.
I prefer the Walmart parking lots.
Yes, I do want to mention that in addition to the regular stock searches of Walmart parking lots, to what David Katz is saying, if you look at Thomas's judicial activities from the time he became friends with this guy Crow, the billionaire, in the mid-1990s, he had, as David has said, so much control over concerns that Crow had, right? Several groups that were connected to Crow, tax groups looking to roll back various taxes on the wealthy, the NRA. There was a Club for Growth. This is a group dedicated to various voting restrictions. So there are any number campaign finance reform that was before the court. Giving corporations a voice through money. These are all things that we know how Thomas comes down on them. And as I've said, Crow is the guy who was pulling the strings behind, or certainly had interests at the same time. So,
well, Mark, I haven't seen this anywhere, but think about this. Okay, here is a Texas billionaire, right? Real estate developer. Who do you think he preferred in the election? W or Gore? Who cast the fifth vote that put what's his name, Bush W into the presidency, and not Gore?
Wow.
Come on. He didn't cast a decisive vote that would have been near and dear to that Texas billionaire's heart. This is a farce. I've said it before. This is bribery. If I ever appear in front of Justice Thomas and he says, I'm going to rule against your client because you said that I was someone who took bribes on Mark Thompson's show, I guess I won't take the case if I think that I might lose. I don't want the client to be hurt because I said that about Thomas. But this is too much. Like I said, Alito, even Gorsuch, you won't hear me ever say stuff like that about them. But Thomas is really sui generis. He is an oddball, and he's way over there on the right. And the idea that he's not influenced, to some extent, that's not really solely the issue. Part of it is the appearance, and part of it is that you just should not take gifts like that. And I also don't believe that they're such big friends. They asked this guy Crow in a scarce interview. He doesn't like to really talk to the media, but so hot. They asked him, what is it that you and Thomas have so much in common? You're such friends. You spent this time together. What do you talk about? What do you have in common? He says, well, we're about the same age. I mean, we don't agree on anything, but we're about the same age. So, in other words,
I come from regular stock.
Yeah. Crow does not come from regular stock. Maybe they trade Hitler memorabilia. I don't know what the exact. I mean, the more you find out about Crow, the more embarrassing the whole situation becomes. And as you say, Thomas, to me, openly corrupt. I don't even have to get to the money. The fact that he wouldn't recuse himself from a case involving his wife, that tells you everything you need to know. David, I adore you. Thank you for putting it together. I know sometimes it could be a pain to connect, so I really appreciate visiting with you on Thursdays. In fact, I'll tell you something. It's not done yet. We have a special open and close coming, a special production element that will be introducing you in this segment. And because I think, yes, I like everybody who's a regular to have a production element. So you're going to have your own, and I think we'll have it by next Thursday. So
that is absolutely wonderful. When I was on Pat Thurston for 4 years, Kim will tell you, they had the year of the cat, or they had cat scratch fever, or when Pat was really feeling it and she didn't think that I would mind, which I don't, because I could take a joke with the best of them, she used to play, "What's up, pussycat? Whoa." Remember, Kim? "What's up, pussycat?" And then I would say, "What's up?" in the legal news.
That is the great Pat Thurston. We love her. I actually...
That's a good word. Come on, ding me.
Yeah, she wanted to be dinged a lot. What's the other thing she used to? The porn stars.
What are the porn stars doing, Mark?
That's right. And then she had one other, I thought. Didn't we have another Pat?
Brett's pretty hunky.
Oh, yeah. Brett's pretty hunky. And Ralph Nader. Remember, Ralph Nader sent me a book, but what did he...
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one, too?
Yeah, that's it. So that's our Pat. We love her. She's going to be on soon. But you're going to be on next Thursday, and you're so cool to spend time with us. David, thank you. David Katz, everybody.
Wonderful being with you guys.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.